Now, the iPad mini 7 isn't the most powerful iPad that Apple makes, but it's the one that I gravitate to the most on a daily basis. And after 1 year of using it, it's amazing to see how much of our different aspects of my life it's been able to take over. You know, we use it to entertain our family, to organize our day-to-day. I use it for personal use. I use it a lot for work as well, even though I am an iPad Pro first user. So in this video, we're going to talk about my 1 year review of the iPad mini 7 because it's been an amazing iPad to have in my day-to-day. And while it is great, there are still some things that are missing from it to really kind of refine the experience a little bit more. So let's talk about the iPad mini 7 1 year later. But now before we continue, if you do enjoy videos like this one where we go over Apple hardware, Apple products, and Apple software, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. But now let's talk about the design of the iPad mini and why we love it so much. So now before we get into the actual use cases of this iPad mini, because I think that's the most important when it comes to a tablet like this, let's talk about the design and the specs a little bit so you can kind of contextualize it and compare it to other iPads and other tablets in the market. So this is the iPad mini 7. This is the one that has the A17 Pro chip, and it's an identical design as the iPad mini 6. That's when Apple fully changed the iPad design language to match the rest of the iPad lineup. Before that, we had the iPad with the home button and the chin and the forehead, a little bit more of a familiar look, but I do like this design a little bit better, even though technically it feels a little thicker than the old design. But again, this one is equipped with the A17 Pro, so it gives you all the nice Apple Intelligence goodies. This is the same chipset that was in the iPhone 15 lineup and the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, so it's a plenty powerful chipset and it can handle a lot of the things that you throw at it, and it can handle iPadOS 26, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But from a design standpoint, you do get the industrial design. It looks a lot like the iPad Pros and the iPad Airs of the world. The only kind of real difference here between this iPad and the rest of the iPad lineup is this one does not have any pin connectors, so there is no first-party keyboard case for this iPad. And that's for good reason. I mean, I've tried Bluetooth keyboard cases with this thing, and while it does kind of help in a pinch if you do want to do some intense writing with it, it still is very crammed and it's not the most comfortable experience because, again, this is an iPad mini and it's meant to be used kind of one-handed and as a pure tablet. The other interesting design choices that Apple went with were the placement of the volume rockers. So if you are holding this in portrait orientation, the volume rocker is actually at the top of it, and the volume up and the volume down does change based on the orientation of the iPad with the accelerometer. So Apple's doing some kind of nice magic in the background. So if you are holding in landscape mode and the volume marker is on the left-hand side, the higher one will be the volume up, versus if you tilt it all the way to the other side, the volume button will actually change and it'll be volume up in a different physical button. So I do like that Apple's able to do that. And then also from a biometric unlock standpoint, this does use Touch ID. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Touch ID on the lock button. I never was, I never have been. I'm a big fan of Face ID on the iPhones and on the iPad Pros. Hopefully Apple does bring Face ID over to the iPad mini 8 when it does come out, but that's what you're dealing with from a design standpoint. Then on the bottom, you do have your speaker grills. You have more speaker grills on the top, so this is a nice stereo sounding system. You do have USB-C on here, so it does charge via USB-C. And you do have some data transfer speeds via USB-C as well. It's not going to be Thunderbolt or the latest and greatest, but it's enough if you are transferring just regular photos and maybe some video files. And then lastly, you do have your 12 megapixel shooter on the rear, and you have your selfie camera on the front. But that is the design of the iPad mini. It's basically this mini little powerhouse that has everything that the iPad Pros have and the iPad Airs have, just kind of dwindled down a little bit to fit this form factor. And then the display itself is actually great. This is an 8.3 inch diagonal display. It is a liquid retina display, and you're dealing with about a 326 ppi, so it's perfect right here. This is a 60 Hz display, so it's not going to be the ProMotions of the world, but still, for this price point and this iPad mini, it's going to be more than enough for that casual use case, especially if you aren't really playing those 120 Hz or 120 FPS games. And then in terms of accessories that I personally use with the iPad mini, I only really put a Paperlike screen protector on here. I do have the Apple Pencil Pro that I use, and I swap it between this and my iPad Pro. And then I like to use ESR's Folio case. It's pretty much identical to Apple's Folio case, just about a quarter or a third of the price. I recommend getting these cases off of Amazon because the ones from Apple are just a little bit overpriced in my opinion, and they give you 99% of the experience when you do get kind of these third-party cases. But this case and the screen protector live on the iPad Pro, and then like I said, the Apple Pencil Pro just swaps between which iPad I'm using in the moment. And all these specs and the hardware has held up great over the last year. Apple of course released iPadOS 26 onto the iPad mini, and surprisingly enough, the experience is pretty much one-to-one to even some of the higher-end iPad Pros. You do get the multitasking, the multi-window mode, the new file system, all the good mainstays that are on iPadOS 26 also came to iPadOS 26 on the iPad mini, which, again, there are some people that love the multitasking and some people that really hate the multitasking. What's good is you can toggle this off and on in your settings if you want to, because I could see it getting a little bit convoluted and a little bit confusing or a little bit overwhelming if you do have a bunch of windows open on a relatively smaller display. So again, as you guys know me, I do use my iPad Pro as my main computer when it comes to just overall work tasks, right? I love my 13-inch iPad Pro. The display is fantastic. It is a powerhouse. It is a beast. It has the M5 chip now because that's the one that we're using now. So it is a great overall computer in my opinion. But the beauty about the iPad mini is that it can do everything the iPad Pro does, just in a much smaller form factor. And the way that we use it in the house, and again, I'm using this as a we because this iPad mini, while I do use it, it is used amongst everybody else in my family, and we use it kind of as a shared iPad experience. So that's the beauty of this thing. Whereas the iPad Pro is a little bit too big, a little bit too tedious for my wife to use, and my daughter to use, and for it to be kind of a throw-around tablet because of the size and the form factor, and also the price point. I don't want a $2,000 tablet getting thrown around the house when I could just have this $400 one and it get kind of the same experience for everybody that's involved. So of course, you have the kind of minimal tasks, you have the journaling, you have the YouTubes, you have the content consumption, you have the web browsing, the small gaming with Apple Arcade, and don't sleep on Apple Arcade. Apple Arcade is actually something that we use a lot, especially with our daughter, especially for learning things and a lot of educational content. Apple Arcade has some great games in there, so don't sleep on it. If you have Apple One or if you want to sign up for it, I do recommend trying it out. So it does check off all those boxes from a casual tablet perspective. It can do everything that you throw at it, and it can do it extremely well. And also the form factor makes it a lot more usable for people, and it's also making it a lot more portable because you can throw it in a purse, you can throw it in a small bag, you can throw it even in a pocket if you want to. And if you guys did see my recent iPad mini accessories video, you saw that bag wasn't that big and it fit perfectly with the iPad mini, whereas I want to bring that bag with me everywhere, but I can't fit my iPad Pro in there. So while the iPad Pro can do everything that I just mentioned that the iPad mini can do, the form factor, the usability, and just the low barrier to entry with this iPad mini makes it something that everybody in the family gravitates towards versus grabbing something like the iPad Pro. So that's one bucket that it checks off extremely well. Then you have all the personal use cases, personal productivity, and the personal organization. We use this iPad a lot for calendars and reminders. It's kind of like our house calendar. We put everything on here. And yes, it does sync across all of our other calendars and things like that, but because we all use this one at the same time, it's easy for us to reference it and see it. It's almost like kind of using a home calendar on your fridge. That's what the iPad mini is structured as in our house. Then you also have the notes application that we use, that I personally use with the Apple Pencil Pro whenever I am using it, especially in bed, especially on the sofa, because the iPad Pro, I use it more like a laptop because of the size and the form factor. And then also, my daughter loves to go into the notes application to scribble on there with the Apple Pencil Pro, so it's kind of checking off all these boxes in different use cases and for different people in the family, all with one machine. And we also use this kind of as our smart home hub. I know that Apple's kind of making some sort of home hub that should be coming out soon, but that's what we use the iPad mini for. We use it to control our lights, to control our scenes, to make sure the house is locked, to be able to view our cameras inside the house, to control our thermostat. Everything is kind of done through here because it's readily available whenever we need to. Yes, we can go on our phones and do the same thing, but it's nice to have this as kind of the hub at the house. And then like I said, of course it's going to fit inside of the whole family ecosystem and for parental use, right? Now we have two kids. We have one that's getting to about 4 years old, and she likes to kind of play these educational games that we think is a net positive as long as we kind of control the screen time, to each their own. But when it comes to all the education games, there's plenty of things that she can go on there and be able to get some productive time on there without kind of going into the YouTube Shorts hole and just kind of scrolling and doom scrolling, which is something that we tend to avoid at all times. And not only that, but we also have a baby now, and what we do is this is actually our baby monitor. We have the Nanit smart home cam, so we have a camera over the baby's crib, and we're able to use this, and I use it on my nightstand, keep it plugged in at all times, and it acts as our baby monitor, and we can dim it all the way down. Use some tricks like the white balance or the white point to turn that off to make it even more dim in our darkly lit room. And then last but not least, I also use it for this YouTube channel, for work, for some revenue generating tasks. For instance, I use this as kind of like the main hub when I am recording. So I'm able to plug this in via USB-C to my camera. I then have the Blackmagic camera app to use with my iPhone, so I have multiple video feeds that I'm controlling from the iPad mini itself. I also plug in a USB-C mic, so my audio goes directly into the voice memos application of the iPad mini, and then I'm able to then export that all out to an SSD if I want to. So it just works amazingly well in my ecosystem. And then if I really want to, I could edit my photos on here with Affinity Photo. I could edit in LumaFusion in my videos on here that if I really wanted to, albeit it's a little bit crammed for my personal use case. But if you are in a pickle, or if you are on the road, or if you are in a portable situation, then the iPad mini will be able to handle that no problem because that A17 Pro chip is very powerful in its own right. So again, that's what I want to keep highlighting. This iPad mini, the size, the portability, the form factor, just makes it the most versatile iPad on the market and the most versatile iPad in the lineup. Yes, all the iPads across the board can do everything that I'm mentioning, and they can do it extremely well. but it has to do with the form factor and the ease of use and the fact that it can kind of check off so many boxes with being in this form factor. But now it's not all perfect, and there's some things that I definitely want to have added to the iPad mini. For instance, I kind of wanted to just be a little bit better overall from a pro standpoint. I wanted to get a little bit more pro features and pro hardware that the iPad Pros have, but remain in this form factor. For instance, as somebody who uses it as a reference monitor, it's great to be able to then export a bunch of footage after the fact. So I wish I could plug in my SSD and get the faster Thunderbolt or faster USB 3 speeds as opposed to the USB 2 speeds. Another thing is that I wish it had an OLED display, and I wish it was 120 Hz, because after you use 120 Hz and OLED on something like the iPad Pro, it's hard to kind of go back and use this day to day. And then lastly, I want Face ID instead of Touch ID, but those are just things that in my wish list for the iPad mini 8 to have. Some of them might come, and I have a video talking about the iPad mini 8 coming out soon, so definitely stay tuned, but those are just some of the things that I wish Apple will include in the next iteration of the iPad mini to really refine everything and perfect what is the perfect iPad, in my opinion. So as you guys saw, the iPad mini 7 is a beautiful device. I use it in so many different facets of our life. We use it for so many people in our lives, which is just one machine, versus, again, the iPad Pro can do everything that the iPad mini can do, of course, and probably do it better in different situations. But the iPad Pro, I'm not sharing this with anybody. This is my machine, this is my laptop, this is what I use for work, this is how I use and run everything that I run. Versus the iPad mini, it can be something that I run my entire business on, but then also it's something that's shared amongst the family and can be used in different facets of our entire lives. So the iPad mini 7 gets my nod of approval after 1 year, and it just amazed me after I sat down and realized just how much we use the iPad mini, especially for day-to-day tasks where I wouldn't use my iPad Pro for because it's just too big of a tablet and too tedious to kind of have around. But that'll do it, everybody. If you did make it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. Let me know in the comment down below what you think. Are you a fan of the iPad mini 7? Do you use it? Do you own it? Do you have an older iPad mini? Very curious to know how you use your iPad mini, and right now I believe it's on sale on Amazon for $449 or $479. Always recommend getting this from Amazon because it's always cheaper than getting it from Apple. But that'll do it, everybody. If you want to watch more videos like this, check out one of these videos right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace. If you made it to the end, it's amazing just how this iPad just disappears. And that's in a positive way. You forget just how good it is because it's just a tool that we use around the house and we share amongst everybody. But peace, everybody.